Have you ever wondered where muscles get their energy for providing movement? Energy is fundamental to the study of physical activity and sports performance, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll be able to identify the different energy systems and how they work to provide energy for fitness and training. Basically, there's two energy systems the athlete uses. There's aerobic, which means with oxygen, and it can be used for long-term steady-paced exercises and day-to-day activities. And then there's anaerobic. Anaerobic means without oxygen. With the anaerobic system, it's then broken down to two further systems. These provide fast burst activities that can last up to 2 to 3 minutes. The aerobic system is the first system we'll be looking at. So basically the aerobic system means with oxygen. Basically it uses fuel sources within the body. Glycogen that's stored in the body is used with oxygen to produce ATP, which is our energy fuel source. Marathon runners down here, you can see basically they are very strong in their aerobic system. So anything that goes from basically 4 minutes and extends up to that point uses the aerobic system. This is just a breakdown of basically what happens with the aerobic system. So basically the fuel source comes through the arteries or the capillary wall, and basically glucose or glycogen meets with the oxygen and energy is formed. So oxygen and glucose or glycogen goes in and it provides energy for the muscles. The output of that is water and carbon dioxide. So basically the waste products are water. So you can think about when we go for a run, heat is an output as well, and we sweat and we actually breathe out the carbon dioxide as the waste product. So when I'm looking at the anaerobic system, basically it's broken down into two systems, so the ATP-PC system and also the lactic acid system. So basically what we're doing is the energy stores within the muscles. So if you can imagine these little Mars bars in the muscles that are used, this is the ATP that's used. And this incorporates the CP system. So basically this system can last between sort of 4 to 15 seconds at the most, but it's for extremely powerful immediate activity. So the next section of our anaerobic system, as mentioned, is the lactic acid system. So basically when the ATP and CP system runs out, the body turns to glycogen or glucose stores in the muscles to make the ATP. And this allows for exercise or energy for up to 3 minutes, but it's a very, very big strain on the body. So basically this system has massive side effects, and those side effects are called lactic acid. So if you've ever felt the burn or that heavy feeling within the muscles when you've sprinted, basically that's lactic acid, and it can stop you from exercising because basically the lactic acid causes muscle ache and cramp. However, we can get rid of lactic acid. We can get rid of it by either stopping to exercise completely. We can breathe deeply and get the oxygen into the body, and then the oxygen basically breaks down the lactic acid, and it's called replaying the oxygen debt. And basically what happens is the body pumps the lactic acid around, and the oxygen then supplies the muscle ATP system, so it goes into the aerobic system. So when we're looking at the anaerobic system, as I said, it's broken down really into two systems. If we can find the ATP-PC system that lasts for up to about 10 seconds, 10 to 15, and then the glucose lactic acid system. So basically if we look at the graph in this situation, what we can see is how each system actually works together. They don't work in isolation. So basically this red line here I'm demonstrating here is our aerobic system. This orange line here is our ATP-CP, and this one here is our lactic acid system. So you can see basically in the first couple of minutes of exercise, predominantly energy is being supplied by the ATP-PC system and also then the lactic acid system. As the time increases, so this is the time across here, our aerobic system starts to take over, and basically this energy demand and steady state here is exactly where the aerobic system kicks in and is working effectively. So if we were to look at some of the examples of energy systems in, say, for example, diving, jumps or throws, generally it's an explosive movement that, really only lasts for about 10 seconds. So that's about 100% ATP CP system. Basketball, obviously it flicks between them. I would argue that there is some aerobic component in basketball because the game lasts for an extended period of time. If it was 80%, 20%, then basically without any aerobic, then basically you wouldn't be able to play for that extended amount of time. Then if we look at, say, the 10,000 metre run or the 10K run, we're looking at about 95% aerobic and only 5% ATP, PC and lactic acid system. It must have some percentage because when we first start exercise, obviously we use a part of the ATP PC system. So you'll see a lot of graphs like this, but just know they don't work in isolation. So whenever you see a zero, be critical of that. So when trying to improve performance or train for performance, basically we need to consider the training relevant to the components of fitness and or the energy systems. Now what we're looking at here is those energy systems. Okay, to understand training, we have to firstly understand these energy systems and know what our energy requirements of our sport or training is for. So when we're looking at energy systems, basically we need to understand how we supply the ATP demand upon the body and what energy system is required. So basically these two here are both anaerobic, so without oxygen, and they're used at the start of any event. However, the ATP PC system is usually rapid. At the most it's sort of 4 to 10 seconds. Basically it's fuel source within the muscle itself. So like I said before, it's like having a little Mars bar in your muscles, and once that's used, that's it. It doesn't supply a huge amount of energy, however it is explosive. Moving on from that, we've got the anaerobic lactic acid system, and again it's without oxygen. The fuel source is the glycogen within the muscle that's stored, so the byproduct of that is lactic acid, so that burning sensation, and this causes muscular fatigue. The most important energy system, and the energy system that is our base fitness, is our aerobic energy system. And again, aerobic means use of oxygen. So the fuel source is our glycogen, fats and proteins within our body. So this is a continued source of energy. There's no fatiguing as long as our oxygen supply is meeting our energy demand. The one thing that this is dependent on is intensity. So I'll talk about that in the next slide. So when we are looking at training our aerobic or anaerobic system, basically we need to understand the intensity of exercise. So intensity of exercise is based on our heart rate, and basically it's a percentage of our maximum heart rate. So basically our maximum heart rate is our 220 minus our age. So if I was 20, okay, you could see 220 minus 20 would be 200. So basically for aerobic training, so when our oxygen supply is meeting our demands to provide the energy, that would be between 160 and 140 beats per minute. Okay, if we go above that 160, as you can see here, what would happen is our energy demands, our oxygen supply cannot meet our oxygen demand, so therefore we flick back into the anaerobic system. So our ATP system, or maybe our lactic acid system, kicks in. So for example, if you think about running up a hill, you're running nice and cruisy and being able to hold a real basic conversation, but when you get to the hill you start puffing and this is an indication of our oxygen supply not being able to meet the demands of the exercise. So two things happen: either we slow down and take it a little bit easier, or we have to stop because the lactic acid builds up and we can no longer exercise. So a little challenge for you here, just try and figure out what this person is firstly doing. Obviously a talented athlete. What sort of energy demands are being met with this particular activity as opposed to maybe this one here. And I imagine this one would be extended over a large amount of time. And what we need to do is we need to be specific, like, are these activities start-stop? Are they continuous? Because obviously that would be different energy requirements. Not really sure what this supposed athlete here is doing. So in summary, the goal of this little video was to get you to start identifying the two different energy systems: anaerobic, meaning without oxygen; aerobic, meaning with using oxygen. Basically, you need to understand this in regards to how the energy system applies or is specific to the needs of the sport. Once it's specific to the needs of your sport, then you can be specific in your training. So making sure that your training is meeting the needs to improve your sporting performance. Right.